Hello, it has been a while. How are you? I hope you guys doing well. And above all, please take care of your health, as it is a time when most people's conditions can be quite anxious and unstable. So eat well, sleep well, and keep high immune system especially. However, I myself have gained 5% body fat in the past year. I know my face has been so rough. I look like an Ant-Man, which will be actually today's main topic. It may be due to the hormonal medication I'm taking. As for my key energy flow, I feel like my body itself is groping and trying to adjust somehow. Since I'm already at the point where I'm switching to the flow of creating a second life in my last years. The other day, Yuzuru Hanyu, the gold medalist figure skater, held a press conference to announce that he will turn pro this July. He once said, "I don't know how to do quad axel because no one has ever attempted. And I have never seen anyone do it successfully. But I'm going to try because only I can do it." He said something like that before. I feel I'm in the same state of mind. I don't know how to manage Yin-Yang 5 elements, to be honest, and do it well, because there is no one who is who successfully managing it, like Sarah Lam or Manuel Rugris in dance. This is the current situation in Yin-Yang 5 elements. But I'm sure that only I can do it. So I believe myself and I'm going to try, though I'm still groping my way through it. But I'll do my best as much as possible and to be useful to others. That is how I feel. I have told you before that it took me a great deal of time to be able to speak in public like this. I have not found anything that says, if you do it this way, it will definitely work or success. However, I realized that if I did it a certain way, it would never work and fail. So I think I will talk about that first today, because I started YouTube with the purpose of eliminate the worst first. And after all, life is very short. We don't know when we die. It may end abruptly. So if there are young people in the next generation who want to learn Yin-Yang 5 elements and use in their lives, I think they can figure out about the better way more than I doing by themselves, as long as I leave them with the view that using Yin-Yang 5 elements in certain way will result in a crazy view, which most people fall into. Do you know stereogram? It's a picture like this. If you look at it from a distance and change your perspective, a hidden picture will emerge. How people who fall into the realm of a crazy view, which is far from the truth, using Yin-Yang 5 elements, which should exist as an academic discipline, is as follows. They put their face close to this picture like this, and then cut it out, some part like this, and they say, here it is like this, so that's why the whole picture is like this. Therefore, the whole picture is not seen at all, and it is a very crazy way of looking at the picture. After all, it turned out a totally absurd thing to say about the matter to analyze. Incoherent. In Japanese, it is said, 支離滅裂. In other words, I think it needs to be a conductor in order to use the Yin-Yang 5 elements well. So this means I'm only in charge of violin, I'm only in charge of flute or trumpet. Not like that. To be a conductor, you need to be able to play all the instruments, right? Maybe it's a similar sense, I feel. When I was in the graduate school of life and environment sciences, I don't think this kind of micro perspective that I developed then would be useful for Yin-Yang 5 elements to see macro later. So clearly we don't know what would be useful in future. In other words, nothing in life ends up being wasted. Everything is useful in the end. So it's definitely better to chase the opportunity to study then there. I'm sure it eventually grows over time into real wisdom while ordinary people are doing magician things with small techniques. And climb to a stage where it is no longer comparable. And you no longer have fear. Every time you try something new, you will forever graduate to the stage of not being able to do it because you lack self-confidence. I really just want to clean up all the wrong trends so that wise people with pure soul can play an active role, and may the sneaky magicians with full of fake be wiped from society. So I will tell you the truth about Japan, clearly and unequivocally today. In other words, I will drop another huge nuclear bomb today. This time it will be even more destructive than the last time in England, Ukraine, or Russia. Because my stance is the same regardless of whether it is Japan or any other country. I just insist that what is wrong is wrong. So where today's theme is, why is Japan falling apart? I hope you will watch it through to the end. I'm not sure if you will be able to reach a state of enlightenment after watching it through to the end, but at least you definitely feel. This would be your reaction. You can expect that kind of feeling after watching this. When the fog clears, you will be convinced something important. And that is my main purpose. First of all, what is Japan? We need to know what Japan is. What is the true energy of Japan? What is the true Japan? What is the Japanese people? What is the soul of Japan? We must know these kind of things. To find them out, we must find out what the true prophecy of Japan is. We need to find out what the prophecy is that represents a real Japan. This is a key point. Because until now, no one has been able to explain what Japan is by using the Yin-Yang 5 elements with prophecy. No one. And the current situation is infested with magician-level cunning and shallow knowledge. It is madness. In the name of the cause of democracy, there is an infestation of crazy perspectives. That's the reality. So I must do it. I cannot die without doing this, because I am the Japanese. Well, I have always wondered why Mr. Yukio Mishima died the way he did. I was not born at the time, so I cannot know the reality of his death. But even his descendants, like me, who are not around at the time, would try to find out, because it is considerable energy, which I should not ignore. He is such a great person. To borrow his expression to describe him, he is the real deal, not nisemono. He wanted to insist on this kind of thing with his life. We have seen post-war Japan become so absorbed in economic prosperity that it has forgotten the nation's fundamental principles, lost its national spirit, run to the end of the road without doing the right thing, and fall into a state of temporary complacency and hypocrisy that has left its own soul in a vacuum. We saw that only in the self-defense forces remained the true Japan, the true Japanese, and the true samurai spirit. Moreover, it is clear that the self-defense forces are unconstitutional from a legal standpoint, and we have seen that defense, the fundamental issue of the nation, has been deceived by opportunistic legal interpretations, and as an army that does not use the name of military, it has become the root cause of the corruption of the Japanese soul and the decadence of morality. If the spirit of the samurai remains in the self-defense forces, as we have dreamed of, how can we stand idly by and watch this happen? What a logical contradiction to protect those who deny themselves. If one is a man, how can one's pride in being a man allow this to happen? A man, a samurai, even if he has endured much, will rise up when he crosses the final line to be defended. But I always felt I'm overlooking something. I have been thinking about it for years. If you look at the flow of events on the day of the incident, it only lasted about 10 minutes out in the open at the balcony. Moreover, before he died, he himself said, people couldn't hear me over that. This would have made no sense, and he would have to end up being criticized like, wow, he's so crazy, what the hell he is, or what on earth he doing? Actually, still half of society think like that. Some critics have ragged on Mishima. And I know this kind of reaction is not his true intention. But I felt he left something behind. And I finally found it. I finally found his secret code he left, and this is exactly his true intention. He risked his life to make his point, so I asked myself, can you put your life on the line and say that this claim is correct? My deep subconscious answered yes, without a single cloud of doubt. So that's why I decided to make this video. 1970, November 25th. This is it. The date of his self-determination and the date of the announcement of the Geki. I realized that this is a cipher. See, if we translate this into yin and 5 elements, this is what we get. This energy is intended to destroy the energy of the Constitution, 1947, May 3rd. The rightmost kanoe represents a sword, and tsuchinoe means a sheath. This usually means a sword in its sheath. In other words, it is not a sword that is blindly wielded in any place. It means that this sword will come out of its sheath when the moment is right. This indicates that he is insisting, I am calm and judicious. This sword will cut down the Constitution, and this energy of my death makes the Constitution deadlocked by hinotoi, and it will eventually become visible. And the energy that sacrificed my physical body will eventually accomplish the realm of another dimension by the Gai energy of Luth and Dark, which surrounding the 3 pillars at large. I explain in detail later, but this prophecy 1947 May 3rd does not represent the Japanese soul at all, and Japan itself at all, and you will see. But if this was all, then Mishima would be just like any other typical idiot politician who criticize others but have no ideas of their own to guide people toward the right direction. It can't be. Can't be. I felt that since Mishima was such a great man, he left as a cause, and he was leading us to the point where we could determine what should be the prophecy of Japan. And I found it. Please take a look. February 11th, 1966, the National Day. How about that? A perfect affinity with the day he died, and the energy is amplified. The rightmost horse and dog create a Hankai phenomenon and create a large fire energy. Also, the bow and tiger in the middle form the Shigo union, creating wood energy and strengthening the unity of the 2 prophecies. Finally, the ox and rooster on the far left create the Hankai phenomenon and create a large metal energy. All 3 pillars form the energy of affinity each other. This is too good to be just a coincidence. I felt that Mr. Mishima left the code because he knew that someone would surely notice this in future generations. This is his true intention. I will now explain what this prophecy is trying to say, and you will notice that it will be quite in sync with what truly Japan is and what Mishima was claiming. I know, unless person is very careful and deliberate in searching for the energy to make the ki react in this way, the 3 pillars will not react in this way, in a meaningful way. I analyze this is clearly intended. In other words, he searched and searched and searched for the best date to communicate his intentions to posterity, and he found it. And he cut off his stomach and his head. It is interesting to be able to connect with great people beyond time and space in this way. It's like the movie Midnight in Paris. Okay, now let's move on to the details. But before we begin, Mr. Mishima, his real name is Kimitake Hiraoka. I pay my complete respect to you. I also express my deepest gratitude to you for putting your life on the line to leave a guide your descendants for future generations with such a code. Your intended sacrificial death will surely be made tangible and alive in the world. Thank you very much. But it is impossible to talk everything in detail. If I really do that, it will be more than 10 hours. So I'll talk as much as I can talk in an hour, focusing the key point. So let me start with the order of things today. I mean to talk about these things in accordance with this prophecy, in honor of Mr. Mishima, and in honor of my fallen ancestor, gone at the age of 28. First of all, what kind of country is Japan? Let me start with my usual story of what I first sensed with my sixth sense when I saw this prophecy. Do you see anything? Especially you, the only 10% precious Japanese audience of my YouTube. Are you still there? Oh, glad you're still there. In the first 10 seconds, this keyword emerged in my head. Shikinen Sengu. This is in the word moving of the sacred objects worshipped at shrines. There are 10,000 gods in Japan. This is expressed Yaoyorozu no Kami. It is said that there are 120,000 shrines in Japan, and the reigning deity at the top is Amaterasu in Isejingu at Mie Prefecture. Have you ever been there? Yeah, I strongly recommend to visit there if you have time. Amaterasu is the ancestor of the emperor, which is recorded in the Kojiki. At Isejingu Shrine, a ritual relocation ceremony is held every 20 years, and this has continued for 1,300 years, since 690. The fourth year of Emperor Jito's reign. In which direction do you think this moving will take place? Actually, the moving Shikinen Sengu takes place in the east and west, like this picture. Every 20 years, the sacred body is moved to the Komekura on the east side and the Kanekura on the west side. It is said that the east side is the era of peace and fertility, and the west side is the era of upheaval and conflict, opposites fighting each other to win over the other. Here's the question. Which way did God move, east or west, during the recent Shikinen Sengu in 2013? I'll give 10 seconds. Okay. It was moved to the west side of Kanekura, so it is currently on the west side. As I have talked about in these videos before, when the five elements of metal, earth, and water are strong, it is an era of turmoil. And when wood, fire are strong, it is an era of peace. If you look at this prophecy, the left side is made up of metal and earth, and the right side is made up of wood and fire. And these two energies, Yin and Yang, were converted at the Kimon, northeast, and the Urakimon, the other side of Kimon, southwest. That's how it looked like. When I realized this at first, I got goosebumps from my neck to my back, and I was absolutely sure this is it. This truth guided to my grounded confidence enough to speak on YouTube. In other words, if this metal and earth side is viewed as west, and this right side is viewed as east, then the Shikinen Sengu energies representing Komekura and Kanekura appear on this prophecy. This is because, after all, the original energy of Japan is contained in this prophecy. This energy of the National Day was once eliminated. However, there was momentum to revive it again, and it was established in 1966. In other words, just as volcanic explosions and earthquakes cannot be generated or suppressed by human control, the essential energy of Japan emerges in the fact that the momentum for it emerges naturally. This prophecy proves it. From a larger perspective, it also appears to be due to the energy of Japan's geographic factors. In other words, to me, this prophecy seemed to represent the fossa magna. Japan is a country formed by the superposition of four plates: the North American plates, the Eurasian plates, the Philippine Sea plates, and the Pacific plates. Those plates were formed by the gradual movement of those plates since 420 million years ago to where they are today, and overlapped. In other words, I thought that the fact that the plates were formed by movement means that they were magnetized and came together through north-south-east-west movement. In other words, it could not be called a prophecy unless they were charged with that energy. In order to represent Japan's prophecy, the prophecy must be imbued with the magnetic energy of the unique orientation of those plates that form the Japanese archipelago. And to my surprise, this prophecy actually does. As the plates collide and stick together, the flow of subsurface heat beneath them is cut off, and that heat tries to escape through small holes and fissures, and also as the plates come apart. Thus, the northeast Japan side rotated counterclockwise, while the southeast Japan side rotated clockwise as they moved apart. And please look at this prophecy's energy flow. The flow of earth and metal on the left or west side is clockwise, and the energy on the right or east side, made up of wood and fire, is counterclockwise. Amazing, isn't it? So this process is synchronized with the energy of the formation of the Japanese archipelago through spontaneous generation. Does it give goosebumps? Then this separated archipelago was reattached and a rift called the Fossa Magna was created between them. Fossa Magna is a long, narrow zone in the center of the Japanese archipelago where volcanoes line up from north to south and across Honshu. It is a ditch where a number of sediments were piled up like layers to form the present central Japan. The geological structure of the Japanese archipelago is completely different from that of the Fossa Magna region to the east and west of the Fossa Magna. This prophecy is a perfect representation of that energy. Now that you understand that the energy of Japan resides in this prophecy, so I will now discuss the detail of this prophecy. And this is in a nutshell. This prophecy says that Japan is a country that is invigorated by the spirit of sacrifice. Japan is a country composed of metal, wood, fire, and earth. Therefore, fire is the imigami, the negative energy for Kanoto, the soul of Japan. This is the critical point. Fire doesn't work as a guardian deity. In Japan, the year of Hinoe horse is abhorred as something bad happens or as a bad omen. Especially women born in the year Hinoe horse are said to be unhappy or to be unable to get married for the rest of their lives, and such things have been said for a long time. This is what is called superstition. From the viewpoint of Yin-Yang 5 elements, the origin of this superstition comes from the energy of imigami in this prophecy. This is a graph showing the number of births in the year of the Hinoe horse, and it is by far the lowest, right? This is because people feared and hated this year. They believed that bad things would happen if you had a child in this year, especially a baby girl. So people avoided this year. I think it is very important to record such things as folklore and folk tales that have been handed down from generation to generation and are known only to the local people, though it is impossible to prove by the medical or economic basis. But for some reason, such customs are said to have existed since ancient times, and the true original energy resides in such things. This superstition of a Hinoe horse is also important evidence of the Japanese energy that has seeped into this prophecy. It is very important to pass on the customs and legends of the grandparent generation, especially in Japan. This is because Japan is a country built on inherited wisdom and tradition, as this prophecy is showing. In other words, fire energy is the root that gives rise to the Japanese soul, Japanese spirit, Kanoto, metal energy. But it is also a negative energy, imigami. Therefore, it is necessary to refine and strengthen the soul. Karate and judo, kendo, this kind of things have flourished in Japan since ancient times. And I assume that this is because of the naturally occurring wisdom of training and strengthening the soul by daring to whip the body. Besides, the energy of this process says that the energy that is evident in the above examples suggests that the Japanese people are naturally very well suited to the kind of single-minded pursuit and discipline that is required of them. In that respect, this process is very synchronized with reality. And here is another reason why vicious religions like Toitsu Kyokai, the Unification Church, can be infested in Japan. This is the result of the misuse of the nature of this prophecy to represent one's soul with a sacrificial spirit and to pursue the spiritual world. If the Japanese has a noble soul, it is possible to turn this prophecy into a positive force that contributes to society with a sacrificial spirit. However, if the soul is still immature, it does not have the power to elevate its soul to the stage of contributing to society by refining it with a sacrificial spirit. And this shows up as a reaction of victimization and an expansion of victim consciousness. In other words, for every immature soul, there are more victims in Japan. Therefore, it is essential for the Japanese to train their souls in the right educational environment. Otherwise, the devil will take up residence in the soul and easily brainwash it. Also, when we learn martial arts or when taking place something ritual ceremony, we wear white uniform to take on the challenge. Of course, it is because coloring was not so developed in the past. However, it cannot be denied that from the perspective of Yin and 5 elements, white represents metal. So we are naturally conscious of metal, which express the spirit of Japan. And by wearing white to get things started, it is thought that the people are aware of the beauty of being an example to others at all times. And it is conceivable that by wearing white and embarking on things, it symbolizes a consciousness that seeks to enhance the soul and show beauty as an example to others at all times. And I guess that the Japanese people are inscribed with the spirit to carry on the tradition in their spirit. The beautiful souls that encompasses the genuine wisdom passed down as the traditions to serve as a model for others create a unique, priceless sense of luxury and elegance that cannot be imitated by any other country. Wearing only one piece of white cloth, the real Japanese soul can express itself at a higher level than those wearing any expensive branded goods. The Japanese have been aware of this fact since ancient times. At the same time, now that it is proved that the world's oldest civilization is not the Sumerian civilization, but Odai Yamamoto Iseki, Aomori, Japan, which was revealed to be 16,500 years old, the Japanese are highly civilized people. The advanced civilization can only be created by a noble spirit that cannot be imitated by any other country. This prophecy encompasses that energy beautifully and quietly insists with silence. There are many theories as to why Shikinen Sengu takes place in a 20-year cycle, and in fact, until now, the reason has never been fully understood. At the same time, the reason has never been explained from the viewpoint of Yin and 5 elements. So I'm the first one to explain. I recognize that the 20-year cycle falls on the ox, rooster, snake. So it can be inferred that it is time to coincide with the energy that strengthens the Japanese spirit, the metal. So I analyze that it is not for any calculative reason. So why is it necessary to strengthen metal? Fire, the imigami, has an influence. There is always a subconscious awareness or sense of crisis that metal will be melted by fire. And if so, the Japanese spirit itself will be melted by fire and roast. The way it comes out is this sacrificial spirit. To make the kanoto itself shine, water is really needed. Do you know what I mean? If metal kanoto, jewel, is washed or soaked with water like this. It's shiny, doesn't it? But there is no water for that. So what makes the Japanese spirit what it is as a soul is interpreted as making one's existence worthwhile by hurting oneself. So the point of turning this process yang is to sacrifice for the good of society. So if I were to diagram it, it would look like this. Turning yang is equal to demonstrate a spirit of sacrifice for the good of society. And turning inten, negative shift, is the personal hedonism, the personal epicureanism, anyway, the pursuit of personal happiness. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this word, epicureanism. Also, I'm not sure of the clear difference between these two words, hedonism and epicureanism. So I will write both. In any case, I'm sure that one day this video will be something that translators or other experts of all kinds of will gather to pass on to future generations. If possible, I really would appreciate it while I'm still alive, because this my prophecy is short-lived. Okay, so back to the plot. Anyway, so turning yang is to demonstrate a spirit of sacrifice for the good of society. In other words, it is the Anpanman. Anpanman is a very famous popular cartoon character that has been supported in Japan for a long time. Do you know him? His most important feature is to break part of his own face to a child who is weak or in need. It can be said that the concept of Anpanman and the Anpanman's energy were very much in sync with this imperative to serve society with a spirit of sacrifice. And that is why it was greatly favored by Japanese people unconsciously. Also, we can see this process energy's reaction in other entertainment. There is a noticeable difference in ending of the film, isn't there? In Japanese films, the main character dies. In Hollywood movies and other foreign film ideas, the main character has a happy ending. I have heard that the people involved in movies in foreign countries were surprised when they saw Japanese movies for the first time, because they had never thought of the idea of the main character dying. I heard that they were gradually influenced by Japanese films in which the main character dies. I'm a bit unsure if this is the first movie in which the main character dies, but Akira Kurosawa's Ikiru, released in 1952, is a movie in which the main character dies. The film won the special prize of the Berlin city government at the 4th Berlin International Film Festival. The nature of this process is very much evident in this kind of entertainment. And above all, the Japanese comedy. We cannot talk about this process without it. How do you think how to make people laugh in Japan? If you don't understand this process, you will never be able to do it. Making the Japanese people laugh with joke is diminishing one's value. Or hurting oneself makes people laugh. In other words, there is a complete cultural difference between Japan and the United States. As Chris Rock has shown, American comedy is about criticizing and degrading others. But in Japanese comedy, the person who initiates the laughter degrades his or her own value in order to get a laugh. This also comes from a spirit of respecting others and sacrificing oneself, which is Procy insisting. When I was small, there used to be a comedy show called Super Jockey, and one of the shows was called Hot Water Commercials. It was on the air at lunchtime on Sundays for about 15 years. This implies that the audience ratings were very high and very popular. Literally, this is a show where people could advertise themselves by the number of seconds they endured being soaked in boiling water. I don't know if people overseas would understand what's so funny about it at all, but I watched it as a child and it left a great impression on me. Now I'd like to go to Mr. Abe here. As you guys know, where he was assassinated the other day and passed away. May he rest in peace. I have titled this subject, Why was ex-Prime Minister Abe evaluated posthumously? Before Mr. Abe's death, there was no movement in Japan that appreciated him at all. There was only criticism. When he was unable to continue as a Prime Minister because of his illness, the Japanese were quite bitter, saying, "Look, here he goes again," or "He ran away with his illness." People criticize him a bunch all the time. This is precisely the nature of Hinoe, that melts metal exactly as this process is showing. Besides, fire energy works as imigami. So this is a country where things that stand out in single are attacked and it goes up in flames. Japan has a strong tendency to knock off people who stand out. This is why there is so much bullying and suicide compared to the rest of the world. In fact, there was a YouTuber who attempted to suicide in around May of this year after being dragged down by people. And many celebrities like actor or actress have also committed suicide so far. Being prominent or outstanding in some way can be very mentally taxing. And this is where it comes from. People should know this. This prophecy proves the true nature of Japan. Anyway, so after assassination happened, it changed and turned into something else of different nature. Japanese people began to express themselves as if a dam inside Japanese had broken. Abe-san, why did you die? What is this all about in the Indian 5 elements? It is changed into something completely different nature. This is a Kango phenomenon. This is a phenomenon that Hinoe, the bitter season, react with Abe, the Kanoto, and turned into water. It is a sacrificial death that made possible this normally unoccurring Kango phenomenon. In other words, the fact that he was assassinated in the course of his official duties, rather than just dying of illness or old age, activated this prophecy. And the sacrificial death caused by the assassination made Abe's soul very much appreciated. It was like a flip-flop. Though it was only for a moment, maybe a week of appreciation, because things back to normal Hinoe already. The water created by the Kango phenomena has already evaporated. At the same time, suddenly the country, the soul is united. Abe-san! This is exactly the reaction of Yoten, turning to Yang of this prophecy. It means that when this prophecy is Yang turned, it generates that kind of energy. You remember that extraordinary atmosphere of Japan becoming one and the energy that shocked and horrified the world, don't you? That's it. Your whole body got goosebumps and froze, didn't it? That was it. That's the energy of the Yang turn of this prophecy. It means that when this prophecy turns to Yang, it emits an unusual, extraordinary energy. At the same time, the moment of Abe-san is coming from the Kango phenomenon, which seldom happen. It can only happen through the death of sacrifice. So Mr. Mishima knew that very well. He was aware of that. He has thoroughly analyzed this prophecy. That's why the wisdom of our ancestors is so important. We should not just criticize and ignore them. He made water with his sacrificial death. This is the kango of wisdom, chitoku, and it produces wisdom and virtue. And my sixth sense caught that energy because I have Mizunoto. Therefore, by that energy, I felt I must definitely investigate. I must never give up. I made this video on the year of Mizuno.
僕にとってはね、僕の小説よりも僕の行動の方が分かりにくいんだって自信があるんです。だから分からない人は分からない。それでよろしい。あるいは僕が死んでね、50年か100年経つとね、ああ分かったっていう人いるかもしれない。